Yeah, I really want you to share your wisdom on what you've discovered along the way. What are some of your favorite biohacking tools? Because you've tried everything. So from
I,
your experience,
I think I
what?
honestly have, because whenever I hear of anything and it has some research and there's some hope of efficacy for it, I'll try it. Like just actually next week, for example, I'm going to see my friend Dr. John Lawrence in Florida because he texted me the other day. Like one of the things I've not been able to fix in my own body is my tinnitus and hearing loss in my left ear.
Mm,
And I've just learned to ignore it, but there are times when it's so loud, it's actually very difficult to ignore. And it's kind of distracting, if not frustrating. And he knows this. So he texted me the other day. He's like, man, you got to get out to Florida. I met this doctor named Dr. Shim, and he developed and I guess patented a technique of doing stem cells into your ear, and he's healing tinnitus and hearing loss, like legit. Many cases, vast amount of research on this. So he's going to come to. John says he's going to come to our clinic and train my staff. If you can get out here, we can make sure that you get treated by him, and we can probably fix your ear. And then John also does something called LumaMed, which is a special laser that they use for the same purpose, and they have great results with that. So he's excited to innovate and maybe combine those two techniques and really help a lot of people. And so I'm like, hello, right here, guinea pig. 5 minutes later, I'm booking my flight. I'm on it, So it's just, I'm just kind of wired that way. Because I still do have a few things that are annoying, and it's like, this shouldn't be this way. Like, why do my ears ring? I totally know that my brain and my ear on that side is totally capable of being restored to its natural function. Like the
mm,
blueprint for it is there. So what's wrong? What is it missing? I don't think I'm doing anything to it at this stage in life that's exacerbating the problem, but I just know it wants some help. It wants some love and attention. And when I hear something and my intuition says like, that sounds legit, I'm going to try it. So I think that's how I end up, just as you said, trying everything, Um,
right.
but thinking about the needle movers, because I get asked this question a lot as someone who just experiments with everything constantly. I gotta say, and I also like to say this for people that are, especially people that have been ill and lost their vocation, right? And they don't have money to go do stem cells or do some of these more expensive interventions. I mean, just today I was doing some labs, for example, and just, I was doing like a urine test and a semen test, and I had to go FedEx it before this interview because I'm going to do some stuff with my prostate. Too much information, but I guess you're a doctor, you can handle it. And I'm looking at the paperwork, like the requisition forms, and I'm just like, it's so confusing, and the instructions to actually do the test. And I'm just like, man, if I was a chronically ill person who had really bad brain fog or just low energy, it would be almost impossible to even fill out those forms. So I feel for people that are kind of incapacitated by physical challenges, especially. And so those people oftentimes don't have money because they can't work anymore, right? So I always start with like the most powerful things that are free. And you mentioned when you were going through my bio, when I talk about primal healing and ancestral living, I personally believe that the reason we as a civilization of humanity are so ill is literally just because we don't live in nature anymore. And not only
Mm,
that, we're disconnected from nature. And so that means natural light. That means getting hot, getting cold, eating wild foods, being electrically grounded to the earth all the time. No EMF, no artificial light at night. Like think about someone living even pre-agriculture. Agriculture was pretty rough too. So let's go back 15,000 years. Now we can't go back 15,000 years, and I love recording a podcast here on the internet. So I'm all about like living in the modern world, but what are the things that we can go back in time, so to speak, and recapture that are missing from our life now? And so for me, this is getting into the stuff that's free. One is getting healthy, safe sun exposure and actually just being outside in natural light. Many people think of natural light as being in a structure that has a lot of windows. Like you would say, oh, I'm in a lot of natural light right now, but I'm not, because half of the UV spectrum of light is being chopped off by the fact that I'm behind glass. So I'm actually getting a fake blue light just from being behind windows, for example, right? And blue light, of course, has been linked to skin cancer and all sorts of other metabolic issues and such. So the free things that have helped me the most are really getting pretty committed about mitigating my blue light. So for example, right here today, I have a photon red light. You can see, for those watching the video, made by a company called Sauna Space. And this is a red light spectrum incandescent bulb that can be used like topically. They make saunas with these bulbs, but I just keep one on my desk to balance out the spectrum of light. So I'm getting some of that, the infrared spectrum that's being cut out by these energy efficient windows, you know? So just a little tweak like that. There's lighting above me that I don't have turned on because it flickers. They're fluorescent bulbs. And if you film them with your cell phone on slow-mo, they flicker on and off about 60 times a second. Really bad for your nervous system, really bad for your eyes, bad for your brain. So I'm not living in a cave, but I do have some red light in here because I'm missing that from the sun. I'm not adding fake light from the lights in here. I'm using the ambient light from the environment. At night, I have a blue blocking eyewear brand. It's called Gilded by Luke Storey. I go grab them, but they're across the room. So at night, if I'm driving or I'm out somewhere where there's a lot of artificial blue light, I throw my Gilded glasses on. Those are going to completely eliminate all of the harmful spectrum of blue and green light. And it's like I'm living in firelight. So I just have habituated myself, for example, in the lighting piece, when I see the sun going down, I'm going to try to sun gaze and watch the sunset to get that beautiful red light that's given to us by nature, which is profoundly healing and regulatory to the circadian rhythm, etc. But once it gets dark, I'm pretty much going to avoid, on a good day, all blue light until I go to sleep. And that sounds like a neurotic kind of, control thing. And there probably is some of that in there, if I'm honest. But for me, I've just done it so long that I'm just habituated to it. And so in my house,
Do you ever watch Netflix, videos?
Yeah, I do. And I'll wear my glasses. And sometimes I don't. Like sometimes if I want to see a movie that's visual and it's going to be ruined if everything's kind of has a red hue to it, But in our home, for example, we have different sets of bulbs in the recessed lighting in the ceiling and different lamps. So some of them are red, some of them are bright, full spectrum incandescent bulbs that have all the colors of the rainbow that mimic sunlight. So if I want to be awake during the day, and I want to get that full spectrum of light that's being filtered out by the windows in my house in hot as hell, Texas, I have daytime bulbs and then I have evening bulbs. And so in the room where the TV is, I can also balance that out by just turning on a couple lamps that have red bulbs in them. And then you're having a more balanced light. So you're not shocking your system with that, what your eye sees and your brain interprets as noon, midday sun. Like if you light and I'm not trying to freak people out, but if you look at your computer, your iPhone, whatever, if you turn on your average LED, like very cool color temperature light, what happens is you're sending a signal to your brain that it's noon. I mean, it's just the stupidest thing ever. I'm not calling people stupid. I'm just saying the fact that humans invent and then normalize something so dumb and so antithetical to our biology is just shocking to me. But again, it's convenience and it's a lack of knowledge. So back to the things that are most meaningful. So handling the blue light, hugely impactful on sleep and also just on regulating your neurotransmitters and ultimately even some of your hormones. So when you're exposed to blue light, your cortisol goes up and your melatonin shuts down. Your cortisol and melatonin have all sorts of other influences in your physiology, right? I mean, it's not like just to make you alert, just to make you sleepy. If you suppress melatonin is the number one cancer fighting property in your entire body, right? When we produce melatonin as we sleep, because there's no blue light, that's what makes us make melatonin, is the lack of blue light. That's what's keeping your body from developing cancer. I mean, one of the things, right? I mean, the most thing. So the light thing, and then the other thing, again, I'm going back to stuff that is mostly free. Exposing ourselves to hot and cold temperatures, depending on where your ancestors were from and their proximity to the equator. Many of us that are on the earth now, I mean, I guess, unless you're from like an equator region, would have had extreme hot and cold throughout your entire life, especially people from, Scandinavia or something like that, right? I mean, I think I'm kind of a Euro mutt, probably northern latitude people mostly, maybe a little southern Italy in there. But the fact is, the human body is not designed, generally speaking, to just be at 68, 72 degrees its entire existence, right? We're supposed to get cold. So the easy way to opt into that, which I started back in the 90s, is cold showers. First, I would do hot and cold contrast therapy, or hydrotherapy, as some people call it. And then eventually I just went to all cold. And now most of the time I just do an all cold shower.
Wow.
And it's amazing. I mean, it's like the best mood elevator. And then even beyond that is just getting in cold bodies of water. I've been doing that my whole life, living sometimes in Colorado and Idaho and places where it's cold, or even in Southern California in the winter months when the ocean is pretty damn cold. Just purposefully getting myself uncomfortably cold very often. And then also in terms of getting hot, now here in Texas in the summer, you don't need a sauna. It's 105 degrees in my backyard. Where the sun is above me is pretty freaking close too, because of my latitude and longitude, etc. So I just go outside and I'm sweating like crazy in 10 minutes. I'll do like 20 minutes out there. I'm really acclimated to the sun, so I don't tend to get burned or anything. Obviously people want to be careful, but I make sure I get hot and cold every day. And to make sure I get even colder, I have a thing called a Morosco Forge, which is an ice bath. And I have that in my backyard. And when it's warm here, which is a lot of the year, I'll get in that thing 3, sometimes 4 times a day. And it's anywhere between 35 and 40 degrees. And I go sit in there for a couple minutes, maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes. And I've just acclimated to that. And I'm literally, I could even say so far, not in a negative sense, but just this is how committed I am. I'm literally addicted to the ice bath. Like if you came to my house and said, Luke, you can't have, I'm going to give you 5 things that you can have to support your health, it would probably be number 1 or 2.
Wow.
It's that important to me because of what it does for my mood, what it does for inflammation. I mean, you get loaded with norepinephrine and dopamine. I mean, it's the greatest natural high ever. So moving past that into something else free that has been really impactful for me, I did it this morning, is a combination of breath work and meditation. And I've been meditating in a pretty committed way for a couple decades. The breath work is probably 10 years or so, which I got from practicing Kundalini yoga. They don't call it breath work, but a lot of the what they call kriyas in Kundalini yoga involve all of these strange ways of breathing that have really profound effects on your consciousness and also your physical health. So just getting a breathing practice, a sun practice, a hot practice, a cold practice, meditation practice, and I'll add to that a sleep practice, like really turning sleep into a priority. I used to view sleep when I was younger. I'm 51 now. Sleep was like, to me, it was like I was wasting my life. So if I slept 8 hours, it would be a deficit to my life. I would feel like, oh my God, I just lost hours of my life, right? And now I know I see it totally different, that I'm actually, probably adding to the number of years in terms of longevity that I'm going to be here on earth in this body, but the quality of life is so greatly enhanced by all of the restorative mechanisms in the body and even in the mind and even spiritually. I mean, if there's a night when I don't get great sleep, and it happens here and there because life happens, I'm much more irritable. I'm much less compassionate toward people, and myself. I'm way less productive. I get more brain fog. I have a more difficult time focusing. I mean, it has such a negative impact on all areas of my life. So for me, it's like really focusing on sleep has become extremely important. It's one of my most cherished values in my life.
Do
It's
you ever
really,
have
really important.
problems with sleep?
I mean, yeah, for many, many years, I would say I was pretty close to having insomnia, which I think was multifactorial, but for me probably had a lot to do with how many emotional problems that I had and just all of the unresolved trauma in my life and just how neurotic I was, frankly. The first thing I think that started to help was really getting committed to a meditation practice, and that enabled my nervous system to start to learn how to calm down and help me differentiate awareness from thinking, right? So that I could start to get that witness, observer perspective, that there's a part of me that is part of, well, just is consciousness that's observing this phantasmagoria of thinking, this nonstop thinking. Because a lot of the time I would try to sleep and my mind just wouldn't stop worrying about my problems. I was so unhealed and just had so many unresolved traumas and things that my mind was just stuck on like negative thought patterns. And I would just be laying there worrying about my problems or trying to fix it, or, like addictively going over grievances and resentments I had toward other people, and just thinking of all the ways that I was blaming them and was going to give them a piece of my mind next time I see them. I mean, just craziness, just neurotic craziness. And anyone that does that, that's listening, like, I'm not judging you. This is just me, right? Not calling you crazy, but I just had a very dysfunctional way of thinking, and my mind was literally fragmented. I mean, I had an injured brain from so many years of drug abuse and so many years of negative, toxic thinking that I became habituated to being in probably a high beta, very alert state that I just couldn't turn off. And so things like meditation and just healing emotionally and spiritually and doing all kinds of therapy and all the things eventually started helping my sleep. But what I discovered a couple of years ago was all those years that I had poor sleep. One of the things that was, I would say one of the biggest contributing factors was that I was too hot, because most mattresses are made poorly and they radiate heat. They capture your body heat and then it gets stuck in there and it radiates back on your body. How I learned this is I got this thing called a chili pad a few years ago. Now they've evolved and they have the original chili pad is like the cheapest one. Then they have the Uller and now the Doc Pro, which is freaking insane. So I got one of those, and it's a little pad with silicone veins of water that goes under your fitted sheet, and you put it on your bed. Think of an electric blanket, but no electricity in it, only water, and you can make that water hot or cold or any degree in between.
With no electricity.
Well, there's a little unit. I wish I had one here, but I'm in the studio. There's a little like a motor in a unit that is, I don't know what it's called, but it's the thing that makes the water hot or cold. It's maybe like 12 by 12 inches. And you put that across the room, and then there's a water hose that goes into this mat that goes into your fitted sheet.
Wow.
And so there's no electricity in it at all. I'm a super EMF nut, so I would never have electricity anywhere near me when I sleep.
I see.
But what it does is it makes your bed cold to your liking. And then using something like the Aura Ring, I started testing my sleep, and I was like, holy crap, my sleep scores just shot through the roof. And then nights when I would forget to turn it on, or if I would travel and I wasn't able to get the AC cold enough in the room, say in a hotel or I'm in Thailand or somewhere super hot, I would realize I'm waking up over and over again all night. And then I started to become cognizant of the fact that the reason I was waking up wasn't what it used to be prior, which was just a crazy mind. It was actually that I was just overheating. And so getting the temperature right while I sleep has by far been the number one thing that has helped my sleep. I mean, just exponentially. And I keep fine tuning it. I get better and better at finding like the right temperature. Like, for example, last night I had the Doc Pro by Chili Sleep. That's the name of the company. I had that and it was on 68. But I also had the thermostat on 68 for my wife. And so I woke up getting a little too cold. So tonight I'm gonna be like, 69 or 70. I'm going to find that sweet spot to match the thermostat for her comfort. So she's happy, I'm happy, and we both sleep well. But that said, that's just one. There's of course tons of herbs and supplements and stuff that can help sleep. But for me, that and also just doing my best, and I'm not perfect at this, so I'm not going to make claim that I'm good at this, but the better I can get at avoiding screens after 8 or 9 at night, I sleep much better. If I'm like scrolling social media at 10 p.m. and then I try to go to sleep at 10:30, I'm going to have a difficult time falling asleep, guaranteed. And that just has to do with brainwaves. That has to do with just, I'm still in beta, and I lay down like, I'm deciding I want to go to sleep now. And my brain says, no, you've been engaged. You have a little cortisol pumping, your brain's in beta brainwaves. You're still excited because you were like engaged with something, right? However, if on a good night, if I am able to go, all right, Luke, just put your phone in a drawer and just relax and read a book or hang out with your wife or play with the dog or whatever, I find that my brain starts slowing down. So I'm going into alpha waves, and then I'll start to get sleepy and I start to feel those theta waves. I mean, I've done a lot of neurofeedback training. I have a decent sense of kind of what my brain is doing in terms of the brain waves and how those feel subjectively. And so that's a great sleep hack too, is just having the discipline to like not engage with your phone, especially if you're going to be on your phone doing work. If I do work like till 9 at night, 'cause I'll test this sometimes, I'll wake up many times that night. My sleep will suck because I was doing work. My brain is too excited. Even if I shut it down at 9 and at 10, I try to go to sleep, it's not going to happen. I'm sure some people are more sensitive than others. My wife isn't like that at all. I mean, she can do whatever she wants. The minute she gets in bed, she hits the pillow, she's asleep. That's just me. So sun exposure, limiting blue light, breath work, meditation. We could throw some spiritual practice like prayer or reading spiritual literature, the contemplation of spiritual ideas, just expanding one's awareness about who we are and why we're here and whatever relationship we have with the higher power. Hot and cold, sun, sauna, ice bath, and then really focusing on sleep. And honestly, those things more than anything have helped me be more healthy in all the ways. And then there's the next category are things that sometimes can cost a lot of money and that are a bit more extreme and experimental, but that's like the foundation of my life. And if you think about that, again, going back 15,000 years, Joy, that's kind of normal life back then, right? You would have been in a tribe of 50 or 60 people. You would have been hugging people, human connection. You'd be out hunting, foraging. You'd be by a fire at night. There'd be dancing, probably, depending on what kind of tribe you're from. There would be no artificial light. It would get cold at night. The ground that you'd be sleeping on would be much colder. Even in a hot climate, the ground is still considerably colder. So all those things I just described, you'd probably be bathing in natural waters in a creek, river, sea, something like that, cooler water. You'd be sweating, you'd be hot out in the sun, chasing an antelope or whatever, right? And you'd be eating wild foods. You'd be eating foods that are nutritionally dense, which are exceedingly hard to find now. So all that stuff, like
a lot of grounding, you're touching earth, and then you get letting the frequency and electrons to go through your body and to release all the accumulated stressors.
Thank you for adding that, because I forgot about that. And especially when I'm in the sun, I like to be grounded because you are soaking up radiation from the sun. I mean, it's native, natural radiation, but it is oxidative stress essentially. Grounding helps that. If you're getting sun and you're touching water or ground, I mean, conductive ground. So that would be not asphalt or plastic or anything that's not conductive. But if you're touching rocks, water, mud, dirt, sand, concrete, all that stuff's conductive. Trees. Yeah. Sometimes when I'm like in a city, I'll just stop and put my hand on a tree and just ground for a minute with my shoes, with like my rubber soled shoes on. But yeah, if you think about it, all those things that I just described to a modern urbanite would sound totally insane. Like, who has time to do all that? Why would you do all that? That sounds crazy. To someone 15,000 years ago, sleeping with a cell phone that's known to cause brain cancer next to your head would be crazy. Turning on lights in your house and tricking your biology into thinking that it's noon when it's actually midnight, they would think that's crazy. So I'm with them. Like, I'm with the people of antiquity. I'm gonna learn as much from their wisdom and their life ways and try and kind of infuse as much of my lifestyle with that as possible, and then set it and forget it and go have fun and know that, like, I'm going to die at some point and I'll be stoked. I'm sure I'll be happy. Or probably be the best moment of my life, floating out of my body and going, oh, cool. Now I don't have to worry about my sore foot anymore, or whatever, or paying taxes, wherever you go. I'm sure it's beautiful. I have a sense of that because I've come close to it, I think, a few times. So, that's the foundation for me, is that stuff.